Hope everyone's doing well. Do me a favor, let me know if y'all can hear me. Grand Rise, I hope everyone's doing well. Do me a favor, let me know if everyone can hear me. Make sure we got all our levels up. You said I'm coming in low? All right. Give me a second.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. Was that better? Or was that still low?
Yep. No, it's better.
Okay, cool.
Mike, you can come up a little bit more, please.
Come up a little bit more. Let's see what we can do.
Or a lot of bit more.
Really? A lot of bit more?
I'm on the meeting portion and I can't really hear you.
All right. David Carey says still real low. All right, give me a second. I might have to make a change. One quick second.
Same. She's not coming in too loud. Coming in hot.
All right, how about now? Is that better?
Yep.
All right. All I have to do now is just turn up my.
Oh, Grand Rising, everybody.
Yeah, we try to get these audios right. So you said I'm clear now, so I had to switch the mic back. The mic was I noticed after yesterday's show, during yesterday's show, the mic was shorting out a little bit. So I was trying another mic. So obviously that mic doesn't work. So we'll make it work with this one. Now I gotta get my audios right. How's the music? Is the music too loud, or is the music good? Can you hear everybody's voice?
2 2 1 2. Mic check. 2 2.
All right, so we'll go with that. Okay, Indigenous Intelligence says it's cool. LJ Free says it's cool, and I can hear you, so that's what's important. So cool. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and greet everyone. So again, Grand Rising, everyone. Grand Rising, Pamela Hall. Grand Rising, Ladarian Woods. Grand Rising, LJ Free. Grand Rising, Indigenous Intelligence. Grand Rising, I Am Flying Squirrel. Down One. Arthur Gray. Alfred Jones. Prince William County representing. I think I had everybody. not, please forgive me. I'll try to catch you as we move forward with our segment. So it's another day. It's part 2 of the Cherokee Wars, or as they say, the Cherokee American Indian Wars. And I don't know about y'all, but yesterday was pretty interesting. We had James Flame, aka Doodle Vision, aka Choctaw Jimmy, coming and give us a whole bunch of information concerning the Cherokee and also the 7-Year War, and how they ended up, them and many other Indians ended up fighting over in not only South America, but Africa, West Africa to be specific, Asia, and even in Europe. We also talked a little bit about the Acadians infiltrating basically the Cherokee Nation, and how the Cherokee Nation are basically the first line of defense for what will eventually be the infiltration of the United States to the south. So, I don't know about you, that was a lot, right? A lot to digest, a lot to take in. Sent out the links to everyone as we were discussing everything yesterday. So hopefully, in your spare time, if you had it, you had the opportunity to look at the information that we sent. Scroll down to the bottom of the Wikipedia pages and check the sources and read through them and bring up anything that we would have missed. So yeah, indigenous intelligence, it was a whole lot. And as you can probably guess, this is day 2 of the Cherokee War, so I expect nothing less, as I'm sure you expect nothing less. Anything that you want to touch on about the Cherokee Wars? No sellout before we get to reading?
I was actually trying to figure exactly where we ended up in our reading. I know I finished with early on in the 18th century. I think we're finishing up 18th.
Yeah, we finished up the 18th century. Give me a second, I'll be able to tell you exactly where. Right around when it talks about Dragon Canoe and his band settled along the Chickamauga Creek. So that paragraph, and then moving into the Scots. Then that'll end the 18th century, and then we'll transition to the actual Cherokee Wars. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is start putting that link in the back, in the chat. That way, the chat can actually keep up what's going on and assist if at all possible, or bring up some questions that they may want to have answered. Grand Rise and Marlon P. Hope all is well. So I'm putting a link to the Cherokee Nation in the chat so that y'all can follow along, and then we can go from there. Let's see. All right, there's the link. And should be good to go. You got the link. What's that up? All right. right, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start reading to get caught up. So we're on day 2, Cherokee Wars, and we're reading right around this last paragraph before the Scots and other Europeans. And it reads, Dragon Canoe and his band settled along Chickamauga Creek near present-day Chattanooga, Tennessee, where they established 11 new towns. Chickamauga Town was his headquarters, and the colonists tended to call his entire band Chickamauga to distinguish them from the other Cherokee. From here, he fought a guerrilla war against settlers, which lasted from 1776 to 1794. These are known informally as the Cherokee American Wars. This is not an historian's term. The first Treaty of Tellico Blockhouse, signed November 7, 1794, finally brought peace between the Cherokee and Americans, who had achieved independence from the British Crown. In 1805, the Cherokee ceded their lands between the Cumberland and Duck Rivers, i.e. the Cumberland Plateau, to Tennessee. So,
Mic check, I'm back.
okay, it's all good. So what we see here is that Dragon Canoe settled along the Chickamauga Creek, and they were the ones that started the raids, if you will, against the colonists. That's the reason why it was called the Chickamauga War, or the Cherokee Cherokee American War. And this was from 1776 to 1794.
So the settlers called his band the Chickamauga and not Cherokee just because of Dragon Canoe?
Yeah, because they were distinguishing them from the Cherokee. So it appears that the Cherokee were not part of, the Cherokee in totality were not part of this raid or the guerrilla war tactics. Just Dragon Canoe and his tribe or his band. Because it said they established 11 new towns.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we got some digging to do.
Yep.
Because it gives us a link to Chickamauga Town. So let's go ahead and.
Oh no, it doesn't even work.
It doesn't work?
Nope. Oh, they hadn't even finished that one yet. They haven't done it. We might have to do some real.
Have to do some real digging.
Some real digging. Here we go.
All right, give me a second.
They ain't gonna make it easy.
I'm gonna go on mute because you know the keyboard is loud.
Peace to the chat. Let me get in this chat real quick. Peace, everybody. Sure you already did the roll call. Macadam 1, I Am Flying Squirrel, LJ Free, Ladarian Woods. I was about to say Macadam 1 again. I just did. Copper Color Queen. David Corey, what up? I think I said Ladarian Woods already. Arthur Gray, peace. Pamela Hall, Grand Rising. Good to talk to you yesterday. Indigenous Intelligence, peace. Marlon P, peace. What up, Free? TMH, peace.
Really?
You in the chat? Hey now. You in there.
So I found some brief information about Chickamauga. Just it says an introduction, but it doesn't really give a lot of information for whatever reason. So let me see. It puts Chickamauga in Georgia.
Hmm.
And if you recall,
Present,
we had posted the
present day
map
Georgia.
for Georgia yesterday. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is that present day Georgia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go give us about the Chickamauga Cherokee. Okay, that's where we're going to find it. So it's under the Chickamauga Cherokee. So I'm going to place the link in the chat, and then the paragraph under the Chickamauga Cherokee is actually Chickamauga Town. So then we can get some information and then go from there. So give me a second as I put this in the chat. All right. So it reads the Chickamauga Cherokee were a group that separated from the greater body of the Cherokee tribes. Okay, that explains that. During the American Revolutionary War, the majority of the Cherokee people wished to make peace with the Americans near the end of 1776, following several military setbacks and the reprisals that followed. The Chickamauga followers of headman Dragon Canoe moved with him down the Tennessee River away from the historic overhill Cherokee towns in the winter of 1776 to 1777. And then they relocated in a more isolated area. They established 11 new towns in order to gain distance from the colonists' encroachment. The frontier Americans associated Dragon Canoe and his band with the new town of Chickamauga Creek and began to refer to them as Chickamaugas. 5 years later, Chickamaugas moved further west and southwest into present-day Alabama, establishing 5 larger settlements. They were then more commonly known as the Lower Cherokee. This term was closely associated with the people of these 5 lower towns.
So the lower Cherokee were the people in the 5 lower towns, and the Chickamauga were the 11 new towns.
Right, but they're associated with them because they moved towards Alabama
Gotcha.
from Tennessee down the Tennessee River, and they meaning the Chickamauga, Cherokee led by Chief Dragon Canoe, were moving away from the settlers. So they really didn't want anything to do with them, so they were trying to move away from them because the settlers were still encroaching and what do you call them?
So the settlers and the frontier Americans are the same people, is what I'm seeing, right?
Yeah, settlers, frontier Americans, the colonists. Until proven otherwise, we'll lump them all in together for right now.
Yeah. That's what it's looking like. So they gave them that name.
Yeah.
They were Cherokee, but they gave them the name the Chickamauga.
Yeah. And where the Cherokee were originally headquartered, if you will, were in Overhill. So Dragon Canoe moved his people from there. It starts to talk about that, where it talks about the Cherokee towns.
Yeah.
And it reads, during the winter of 1776 to 77, Cherokee followers of Dragon Canoe, who had supported the British at the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War, moved down the Tennessee River and away from the historic Overhill Cherokee towns. They established nearly a dozen new towns in this frontier area in an attempt to gain distance from encroaching European American settlers. Okay, so that explains it even more. L.J. Free says, I always wonder why the wars in America starts with the Revolutionary War, Chickamauga Wars, Second Cherokee War, Imminent Yankee War. He says she thinks she get it now. So am I, because it looks like this is where we start to see where the split happened. Because Dragon Canoe supported the British at the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War, and it seems like some of the other Cherokees supported the 13 colonies, which eventually became American. And because of that split, that would explain why they left Overhill to start their 11 towns, because they weren't feeling the Americans, for lack of a better term. He says all Chickamauga are Cherokee, but all Cherokee aren't Chickamauga. Exactly.
Facts. Big facts. You can see that. Yeah.
So Dragon Canoe and his followers settled at the place where the Great Indian Warpath crossed the Chickamauga Creek near present-day Chattanooga, Tennessee. They named their town Chickamauga after the stream. The entire adjacent region was referred to in general as Chickamauga area. American settlers adopted that term to refer to the militant Cherokee in this area as Chickamaugas. In 1782, militia forces under John Seaver and William Campbell destroyed the 11 Cherokee towns. Dragon Canoe once again led his people further down the Tennessee River, establishing 5 new lower Cherokee towns. After the Revolutionary War, westward migration increased by pioneers from the new states of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So hold on. If I'm reading this correctly, Dragon Canoe and his band of Cherokee moved down to 11 towns. And I'm assuming, if I dare, that if there was a militia raiding the towns or raiding the colonists, it was because they were encroaching, which then led in 1782 militia forces under John Seaver and William Campbell destroyed the 11 Cherokee towns. Never mind, my question is answered. So the militia wasn't the Cherokee, the militia were actually John Seaver and William Campbell. So it seems like while Dragon Canoe and his band of Cherokee were trying to get away from the colonists, they kept encroaching and forcing this band of Cherokee, the Chickamauga, to continue to move. Unless I'm messing something. Somebody let me know. That could be wrong. Okay. So then it reads, after the Revolutionary War, westward migration increased by pioneers from the new states of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Grand Rising, no Cliff. So hold on. You see what this says? After the Revolutionary War, westward migration increased by pioneers from the new states of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. I thought Virginia was already established as a state before the Revolutionary War, because it was established as a colony. Unless they, never mind, I've asked my own question. After the Revolutionary War, these were the first of the 13 colonies that were declared as states, supposedly, according to this. Which doesn't make any sense because, as we know, South Carolina did not become a state until the till 1788. But we'll just roll with this for now. So now we're going to talk about the 5 lower towns dealing with Dragon Canoe. There's Chickamaugas, because they've already been forced from the 11 towns that they established earlier. So now they got kicked out of those 11 towns by the militia, and now they're forced to move further southwest. So it says Dragon Canoe relocated his people west and southwest into new settlements centered on Running Water, now Whiteside, on Running Water Creek. The other towns founded at this time were Nickajack near the cave of the same name, Long Island on the Tennessee River, Crowtown at the mouth of Crow Creek, and Lookout Mountain Town at the site of the current Trenton, Georgia. In time, more towns spread south and west, and all these were referred to as lower towns. These were the 5 lower towns that were established at that time. Then it talks about the constant war. It says Chickamauga Cherokee became known for their uprising enmity against United States settlers, who had pushed them out of their traditional territory. From Wandering Water Town, Dragon Canoe led attacks on white settlements all over the Americas southeast. So they didn't start retaliating until they got pushed into the 5 lower towns, it looks like. Because then it says they became known for their uprising in enmity. Say that 3 times. Right? It says the Chickamauga Lower Creek and the frontiersmen were continuously at war until 1794. Chickamauga warriors raided as far as Indiana, Kentucky, and Virginia, along with the Western Confederacy, which they helped establish. Because of the growing belief in the Chickamauga causes, as well as the destruction of the homes of the other Native Americans, a majority of the Cherokee eventually came to be allied against the United States. So it seems like these raids started to pick up momentum, if you will, and other bands of Cherokee started to raid with Chickamauga. Then it goes on to read, following the death of Dragon Canoe in 1792, his hand-picked successor, John Watts, assumed control of Lower Cherokee. Under Watts' lead, the Cherokee continued their policy of Indian unity and hostility towards European Americans. Watts moved his base of operations to Willstown to be closer to his Muskogee allies. Prior to this, he had concluded a treaty in Pensacola with the Spanish governor of West Florida, Arturo O'Neill de Tyrone, for arms and supplies with which to carry on the war. Now it gets interesting. So it looks like we're going to have to put on our hard hats, ladies and gentlemen. Free says the Chickamauga Wars extended through 1794. That's a long war to be fought on home soil. So she put in a link. Okay, I see you, Free. So the Cherokee War and the frontiersmen were continuous in war until 1794, but Dragon Canoe passed away in 1792. So that means there was 2 more years under the lead of John Watts. Shall we look into who John Watts is?
Keanu Reeves play him in a movie? Okay.
No, that would be John Wick. Grand Rising J. Sasquatch. We're talking about the Chickamauga Cherokee and the town that they're in, and how they got pushed from the 11 towns that were created to the 5 towns, and how they're now starting raids and allied with the Muskogee. So we're on the Chickamauga Cherokee page, so I'll put the link in there. And remember, these links from Wikipedia will always provide the source so that you can actually go do the research on what was placed in here to make sure that the information is correct and accurate. And we understand that this is just one point of view. We have not talked to any Cherokee Indians, and the only Indian right now that we know that has information with 2 Division, aka Choctaw Jimmy, aka James Frank. And so he hasn't come on yet, so we're just reading this information, moving forward and asking questions, like we always do. So let's see if we can find out something about John Watts, who was a hand-picked successor by Dragon Canoe. And notice it doesn't say that. As soon as I'm about to open my mouth, I'm about to stick my foot in it. They call him a chief. He was a hand-picked chief. So there's a link for John Watts, the Cherokee chief over the Chickamaugas. So John Watts, or Kunokiski, also known as Young Tassel, was one of the leaders of the Chickamauga Cherokee, or Lower Cherokee, during the Cherokee and American Wars. Watts became particularly active in the fighting after the murder of his uncle, Old Tassel, by militant frontiersmen who attacked a band of delegates traveling to a peace conference in 1788. So it talks about his family life. John Watts was the mixed blood son of a British trader who was also named John Watts, and was the official British government Indian interpreter for the area until his death in 1770. His mother was a sister of Old Tassel, Doublehead, and Pumpkin Boy. Watts' parents resided in the Overhill towns along the Little Tennessee River. Wirt Watts, Sequoia's mother, may have been his sister. So y'all see this, right? John Watts was of mixed blood. So his father was a British trader, and his mother was a sister of Old Tassel. So we already know that he would have been considered a mulatto. So let's look at the separation from the Overhill towns. He says his mother may have been his sister. I know, right? Hold on. Old Tassel was his uncle. He was called Young Tassel, but his uncle was called Old Tassel. So I guess Old Tassel raised him. So Old Tassel, so you figure Old Tassel was his uncle, and his mother was a sister of Old Tassel, and his father was a British trader named John Watts. No, you're not sure. His mother wasn't his sister. But hopefully I'm not messing it up or mixing people up on it. If it doesn't make any sense, we'll get it right. Let's look at the separation from the Overhill towns. It says, although he withdrew from the Overhill towns along with Dragon Canoe's band, Watts was at first only occasionally involved in activities of Dragon Canoe and his Chickamauga warriors. He moved first to Running Water Town and later to Willstown. Watts eventually became Dragon Canoe's hand-picked successor. Then it talks about him as a warrior. Watts led his first major action of Cherokee American Wars in 1786 against the forces of the United States, against the forces of the state of Franklin over their incursions into the territory of the Overhill towns. Warriors from the Valley towns also joined in the attacks. His next major action came in October 1788, following Old Tassel's murder. He led a large war party into North Carolina's Washington District, now Tennessee. Remember, Washington District was where the Oo-watie were at, and they were the first, for lack of better terms, the first Native Americans. It says the band included the ridge known as Oo-watie or Gallegina. Going into his first battle, they captured and burned Gillespie Station, killing its defenders and taking several prisoners. The Cherokee warriors then proceeded against White's Fort, modern-day Knoxville, Tennessee, where they were repulsed. Afterward, the group made a semi-permanent camp along Flint Creek in the area of the future Unicoi County, Tennessee, harassing, raiding, and attacking white settlers in the surrounding countryside. Their base was discovered in January the following year, and they were attacked by a troop commanded by John Seaver, which he talked about earlier. Watts signed the 1791 Treaty of Holston along with fellow war leaders Doublehead, Bloody Fellow, Black Fox, a future chief of Cherokee Nation, the Badger, Dragon Canoe's brother, and Raising Fawn. Remember they had talked about Doublehead? Now he was a renegade chief and they ended up having to kill him. So I think that's enough information on Mr. Watson. So we found out that he was actually of mixed blood. His father was a British trader, and his mother was a sister of Old Testament. Again, matrilineal bloodline. So that's how he ties in. So anybody related to him is tied into the land. Therefore, very difficult, if not impossible, to be removed. Anything you want to say? Oh, Grand Rising Bones. My apologies.
Grand Rising. No, you was reading. Peace, everyone.
Peace, Bones. Peace.
Anything you want to add about this Chickamauga band of Cherokee and how Dragon Canoe and Mr. Watts end up causing so much havoc? Anything?
I think I had. I just know. At least you know who the Cherokee started from. Well, another set of them.
Yeah, it seemed like the split happened after the division, after the Cherokee chose sides on which side to fight. Because it talked about the Chickamauga fought on the side of the British. So after the war was lost on the British side, they moved further southwest. And I'm sure that the settlers probably knew that they were fighting, or they fought for the side of the British. So that might have explained why they were being harassed. Although I don't know if that would have changed anything. Free asks, were they attacking white settlers or defending their land? Free looks like they were defending their land because they didn't get attacked until after the 5 towns were built. Because it doesn't mention anything about them retaliating when 11 towns got burnt down by Seaver. She said that Appalachians were a natural barrier dividing settled territory from the Indians. So what are settlers doing in Indiana? Well, remember, when that decree came down before the Revolutionary War, they still couldn't stop the settlers from moving out. So at the end of the day, you weren't going to stop these settlers. And then again, we don't know what, well, we have an idea because we have access to the shipping logs. Because the government was doing a lot of backdoor deals as well. So you still got people coming over here and they're working. When I say people, I'm talking about immigrants coming over here. And they're being allowed to come over here. And they're actually working with the squatters to establish land. Doesn't matter what the treaty said, because the government allowed them to continue to come over here. Because if the government didn't want them to come over here, they would have stopped the ships from coming in, because they could have done it. That's just my 2 cents. J. Sascalona said there's a lot of info on him in the 432 Drop Library. Okay, that's good stuff. So anybody that wants any more information on him, they can go there. And you can also look at the sources from Wikipedia. And you'll be able to do some more extensive research, find out more about him. I guess the only thing, what you would probably find is actually who his father was, because it doesn't really tell you. It just says he was a British trader. Alright, so let's get back to someone. We talked about Cherokee Town. Excuse me, Chickamauga Town. So cover that. Keep everything straight. Alright. Cool. So it goes on to read that the Cherokee ceded their lands between the Cumberland and Duck Rivers to Tennessee. So they ceded more land November 7, 1794. And that was during the first treaty of Tellico Blockhouse. And that was a treaty, if I'm not mistaken, that dealt with Emperor, one of the first related emperors of the Cherokee Nation, if I'm not mistaken. Anybody remember his name? Talked about him yesterday.
I'm trying to remember his name. Yeah, that's when you found out that you had Indians all over the globe fighting.
I'm looking over here now to see if I can find it. Because they were supposed to go visit King George II. And it comes to me. But anyway. So no sellout. You want to go ahead and bring it on in with the Scots and other Europeans among the Cherokee in the 18th century.
Yeah, let me grab it real quick. Hold on.
Okay. This will give us a better understanding of how the Scots / Irish, aka Acadians, tie in. Because they're bringing in a lot of names and people. I'm sure we'll find out how all this ties in, and significance and prominence. And it could be very telling as to why the Cherokee are the largest and the most profitable tribe of all the 5 civilized tribes in the Americas, aka the United States.
Yeah, the Cherokee adopted everybody.
Yeah. They understood numbers apparently.
What link are we reading from again, TMH? I think
The Cherokee link, I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, I was all over the place, so pardon me. I mean, I can read it if you don't have it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it. If you want to start, and I can grab one of those, grab a pickup point. Oh, you're at a let's see, what is it? Yeah, you can start.
Okay. All right. It's all good, bro. Okay, so it reads: the traders and British government agents dealing with the southern tribes in general, and the Cherokee in particular, were nearly all of Scottish ancestry, with many documented as being from the Highlands. What? Let me read that again. The traders and British government agents dealing with the southern tribes in general, and the Cherokee in particular, were nearly all Scottish ancestry, with many documented as being from the Highlands. So what are the Highlands?
Highlander.
I know,
Pay
right?
attention.
There can only be one. You remember that shit?
Remember, those are the Scots. Remember back to the movie and they story, the Highlanders are the Scottish.
Right. I'm gonna read this right quick. Just give you a brief synopsis. It says Highland Scots. Culturally, the Highlands and the Lowlands diverged from the later Middle Ages in the modern period. The Lowland Scots replaced Scottish Gaelic throughout most of the Lowlands. The term is also used for the area north and west of the Highland boundary fault, although the exact boundaries are not clearly defined, particularly to the east. The Great Glen divides the Grampian Mountains to the southeast from the northwest Highlands. The Scottish Gaelic name, and I am not pronouncing that, which literally means the places of the Gaels, and traditionally from the Gaelic-speaking point of which includes both the Western Isles and the Highlands. The Bones, correct? They were the Scots. It says a few were Scot-Irish, English, French, and German. And it says see Scottish Indian trade. Many of these men married women from their host peoples and remained after the fighting had ended. I'm going to read that again. Many of these men married women from their host peoples and remained after the fighting had ended. Some had mixed race children who would later become significant leaders among the civilized tribes of the Southeast. So I wonder when they say many, how many was many? Thanks, Ree. She put in, yeah, it was Emperor Moy Toy. I don't know how I would have forgot that. Thanks for dropping that link in. So you have many of these men staying and marrying into the Cherokee, particularly, as they say, the Scots, and having mixed race children who would later become significant leaders among the 5 civilized tribes of Southeast. It doesn't say among the Cherokee, it says among the 5 civilized tribes of the Southeast. So let's take a gander at some of these names, these notable traders that end up having children with these, might as well say, wise councilwomen who end up choosing the chiefs. Notable traders, agents, and refugee Tories among the Cherokee include. Does anybody know what a refugee Tory is?
Fuji member?
Did you say clergy member?
No, I said Fuji.
Ooh la la la.
I'll put that in the background for now. Oh, fuck.
Okay.
I just wondered if anybody knew. So,
While we got this pause, I still have not found out where we're reading from. I know you clicked off already into Oblivion again.
no, I'm not. I'm back to the
What was the section under? I thought I heard you say language.
Scots and other Europeans among the Cherokee in the 18th century. So if you're under 18th century, you just gotta go scroll
Gotcha.
down. So I'm on the second paragraph where it reads notables, traders, agents, and refugee Tories.
Got it. Thanks, sir.
Okay, my pleasure. It says among the Cherokee include John Stewart, Henry Stewart, Alexander Cameron, John McDonald, John Joseph Van, father of James Van, Daniel Ross, father of John Ross. Remember that name, right? Chief of the Cherokee. John Walker Sr., John McLemore, father of Bob, William Buchanan, John Watts, remember father John Washington, John D. Chisholm, John Benge, father of Bob Benge, Thomas Brown, John Rogers, John Gunter, German founder of Gunter's Landing. James Adair, who's Irish. William Thorpe, English. Peter Hildenbrand, German. Among many others. Some attained the honorary status of minor chiefs and or members of significant delegations. By contrast, a large portion of the settlers encroaching on Native American territories were Scots-Irish, Irish from the Ulster, who were of Scottish descent and had been part of the English plantation of Northern Ireland. They also tended to support the revolution. But in the back country, there were also Scot-Irish who were loyalists, such as Simon Girty. Where do we start with this?
You said, where do we stop it?
Start.
Start.
Because they make it a point to point out that many of the Scots-Irish were loyalists, meaning they were loyal to Britain. And it says Simon Girty. But a paragraph up, you got a good 10 or 15 names of noble treasurers, agents, and refugee Tories. Let's start from the bottom and move to the top, shall we? Simon Girty. Who was Simon Girty? You know he was Scot-Irish. Link in the chat.
You said refugee Tory?
Yep.
Torrie.
Well, it was spelled Tories, but
Torris.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe Tory maybe is the singular.
Tor.
I don't know. Don't give me the line. I'm making stuff up.
So while you looking for that, I'm gonna look up Simon Girty, who was a Scot-Irishman who was a loyalist, who was also encroaching on the Cherokee land.
They got his picture, this illustration of him called "quote unquote" the White Savage. Yeah, it was etching from the Thomas Boyd's 1928 book by the same title.
Mm-hmm. Look like he could be the brother of Daniel Boone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it reads, Simon Girty, November 14th, 1741, February 18th, 1818. Sometimes referred as Kate Pacoman, was an American colonial of Irish descent who served as a liaison between the British and their Indian allies during the American Revolution. He was portrayed as a villain and was also featured this way in 19th and early 20th century United States fiction. As children, Girty and his brothers were taken captive in Pennsylvania in a Seneca raid and adopted. He lived with the Seneca for 7 years and became fully assimilated. Preferring their culture, he was returned to his birth family, but retained a sympathy for the Indians. Now that's interesting. This would be the second time we've read about an Indian raid and they're capturing children. So it goes on to read that Simon Girty was born to Simon Girty and Mary Newton near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Simon Girty the Elder arrived in North America in 1730 from Ireland. The accepted spelling of Girty's name was most likely a colonial derivation of McGirty, Garrity, spelled Garrararghty, Garrity spelled Geraghty, or Girty spelled Girtde. In the corruption of the Anglicization of an older narrative Irish surname, Mag or Racktop. After establishing a trading post, Simon Girty the Elder and Mary Newton had 4 sons, Thomas, Simon, James, and George, 1739 through 1746. In May 1750, the sheriff arrested the entire Girty family along with other squatters for building a home on
Mm.
Sherman's Creek on the Susquehanna River. Before the British authorities allowed any settlers to build there, the British authorities, specifically George Croghan, also burned down the Girty home, shed barn, and court. All squatters were forced to post bonds of $500 each and were bonded for trial at Cumberland County, Pennsylvania.
They tried to be first on the block and got arrested for it and got their property burned down. You ain't even supposed to be over here.
Priest says, imagine the psychological warfare of having the children in your community rounded up after they have been raided. My goodness. Yeah, I muted the mic. It was live. My bad. Grand Rising Doodle Vision. Hope all is well. The link has been sent, and it's also in the back chat. Whenever you're ready to come in, we're talking about Simon Girty. It's interesting that they actually did, I guess, for lack of a better term, enforce some of the laws preventing squatters from building homes on different lands. So that's encouraging. I'm sure there were many more losses than there were victories for the Indians, but so it reads that Simon Girty's father was killed. So in December 1750, Simon Girty the elder and Samuel Saunders fought a duel which ended with Girty's death. After both men fired a shot and missed, they pulled out their swords. Girty made a misstep and failed. Saunders treacherously ran him through with the sword, which caused his death. Saunders was either a convict and escaped bondservant, a soldier, or a rival trader who competed with Girty and murdered him to steal his trade goods. Darn. Samuel Saunders was subsequently arrested, tried in Philadelphia, convicted of manslaughter, and imprisoned. Did y'all hear this? He said he was either a convict, an escaped bondservant, a soldier, or a rival trader. So that means there were potentially 4 possibilities of who this individual could have been. Not only that, but these are the type of individuals that Indians were running into. So could have escaped bondservant been someone who came over here as an immigrant, was supposed to work on the land for 7 years, and just stopped showing up? It's possible that happened, right? You figure you're supposed to work for 7 years, you don't work for 7 years, so then you owe the time not served. So now there's I guess for lack of a better term, a warrant or a bond put out for your arrest, or to bring you back in.
You might as well just work.
Something to think about. One source says, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bones.
Also remember, the majority of people were working. They were working to pay back the price of it was for that ticket to come here.
Right.
Because all Europeans didn't have money to pay boat captains. They paid boat captains with labor. That's why if you look at the majority of the towns, who are the towns named after?
They were named after the captains of the ship. Especially the counties. We're gonna have to do a build on that about the captains and the ship's logs and who came over and what happened. And that's gonna be a long, because you got what, 10 gigabytes of that information, Bones?
It might go a week or so.
Leaning more to the so part, but that's just me. So it says one source says that Simon Girty, the eldest, head was split with a tomahawk by an Indian called the Fish, and that John Turner, his half brother, avenged Girty by killing the Fish. Thomas McKee and George Gibson applied for Simon Girty, the eldest, estate, that meaning his house and land, and persuaded William Plumstead, the mayor of Philadelphia, to backdate their application by a full year to make it appear legal. McKee claimed Girty owed him $300 for trade goods he sold to Girty on credit. Plumstead went along with Gibson and McKee's scheme, and McKee was subsequently awarded Girty's estate. So wait a minute, you mean they was buying stuff on credit even back then?
But you know what's so funny? This is a documented lie, fraud, and forgery in history, and they documented it.
Shh, don't tell anybody. 3 years after Simon Girty the Elder was killed, his wife Mary married John Turner, his half-brother, and in some version of the story, her husband's avenger. They settled near to the land once owned by Simon Girty the Elder. So in 1754, John Turner Jr. was born. During the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, the area where they had their farm became too dangerous, with numerous war parties attacking settlers. So John Turner took his new family to Fort Granville on the Oneida River in western Pennsylvania, along with dozens of other English families looking for safety. Because you got to remember, this time you had a lot of the Algonquins raiding. So it says at Fort Granville, John Turner joined the local militia under Captain Edward Ward and was promoted to sergeant, Ward's third in command. On August 2nd, 1756, Captain Ward had taken the majority of the militia out on patrol, which was known to the local Lenape tribe. Remember the Lenape? They didn't want any of these Europeans on their land. They were pan-Indians, remember? Free said he only took his family, not the house. Yeah, Free, I think that house was a solid structure. Captain Francois Colon de Villiers attacked Fort Granville with 55 French soldiers and about 100 Lenape Indians. Villiers' force snuck along Oneida River and set the stockade on fire. This made a large hole through which they killed an officer and an enlisted man and wounded several men who were fighting the fire. Villiers then offered quarter if the fort surrendered. So John Turner, as the ranking living officer, opened the gate. After marching the prisoners away from the fort, the French and Lenape plundered the fort and burned it to the ground. The Lenape then took the prisoners, killing their village and Allegheny River. So this is going to be the last part I read about John Turner. Simon Girty. The Lenape had previously traded with Simon Girty the Elder, and they recognized his wife and children. One tradition says that the Lenape sincerely believed that John Turner was the man who killed Simon Girty, the Elder, in order to take his house, land, and family. Other traditions say that the Lenape recognized him as Girty's avenger and killer of the Fish, or that they thought that John Turner had badly beaten an Indian. For whichever reason, Chief Jacobs, or Tawia, of Lenape and his council condemned John Turner to be burned at the stake. Whoa. The Munsee Lenape pushed red-hot gun barrels into and through John Turner's body.
What?
John Turner endured 3 hours of ritualistic torture before he was scalped, and a young Lenape struck a tomahawk into his brain, killing him, all in front of his wife, stepchildren, and newborn baby. Thomas
Wow.
Gurney escaped his Lenape captivity during the British-led Kidney expedition on September 8th, 1756.
But remember, the Lenni Lenape wanted all of them to go home. Wanted all of them to go back. Wanted no dealings with them.
It says after the Kidney expedition, the Indians split the Gurney family up. They were sent to live with different tribes. 13-year-old James Gurney was taken by Shawnee warriors, as were Mary and baby John Turner. Lenape kept 10-year-old George Gurney. 15-year-old Simon Gurney was given to Gayasuta, chief of the Ohio Seneca, the Mingos. Hey, ain't that a rap?
Could this be another way of a hijack? All his children burst up amongst tribes, eventually grow up and become leaders.
You keep seeing it, right? And lived in a
Yep.
village near Lake Erie's East Shore in northeastern Pennsylvania. And we also got to take into account who wrote this, the source, and what their potential intentions were when they wrote this. So, could the Lenape have done this to this family? It's possible. But this is just one side of the story, so we must take that with a grain of salt for what it's worth. So that was Simon Gurney.
Yeah, obviously it looked like he was squatting in the Lenape area.
So, Doodle Vision said the Lenape had disdain for the colonizers, and it came from the King Philip's War. Keep dropping the pellets, man.
Yeah, I remember when we read about them in the beginning, that they were the one tribe that wanted no dealings with the colonizers.
Yeah, that's
In the
right.
meeting, the Lenape was like, you leave it up to them, kill them all, or send them all back.
Yeah, that's where the Pan-Indian movement came from.
Yep. Ain't that something? They had a Pan-Indian movement back then.
Totally different than, look, it's totally different than Pan-African, right?
Yep. So with all this paying this, paying that.
So that was the last portion of the 18th century dealing with the Cherokees. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the link to the Cherokee American Wars Wikipedia version in the chat. And remember, we use Wikipedia as a reference, not as the end-all be-all source. We use Wikipedia because, one, it's easy. Two, people can go back and check the sources from which they got the information. And three, if you have some information to add or you have some information to debunk what is written, that's even more valuable. So Wikipedia is a source, it's not the source. It takes less time than trying to upload in a book. Go ahead, Bones.
It allows everyone that's listening that wants to read along to be a part of the information. It eliminates you having to have a certain amount of cash flow to be able to buy certain books in history to be able to share information.
It's an easy share for a community. I mean, we don't really have
eliminates. No, the problem, since you mentioned it, they probably throw us off for 5 minutes. I'll address it real quick. The reason why people have a problem with it, because it doesn't allow people to stand back and call themselves the scholars of information when the information is public and anybody can access it. That's why people have a problem with it. Let's keep this 100. I'm well rested this rising.
Okay. Man. Well, that explains some things. Google scholar, don't be a Google scholar and say, okay. As we said, these pages have references at the bottom, sources at the bottom. I mean, where we're reading from, the source is the page itself. It's not.
Man, even if you got a book, the book is gonna have a source where the information came from. If you got a magazine article, it's gonna have a source.
Big facts. Then y'all learn about citing sources.
No, I don't think a lot of people know about that because they're not using sources.
So,
oops.
ALA formatting. Cite your sources, B.
Do Division says it doesn't leave room for Patreons. That's why they don't like it.
Oh man, we still not getting paid, right? We don't. This is not a monetized YouTube channel, correct?
This is a conscious assembly is a nonprofit organization whose main goal is to help people, help their communities, and help their tribe to become self-sufficient.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Put that plug in there. And then Free puts in interesting families were broken up in real time and it had nothing to do with African slaves. Who would have thought it? I know, right?
Yeah, they ended up in other tribes, right? Separated in other tribes, so they are now of those tribes.
But now you can see the planting of the seeds. What happens later on? The chiefs are taking on these children, making these children what?
Chiefs, or making them family members.
Yep. Either way, they are part of the tribe.
High-ranking family members at that.
High ranking, exactly.
Because in our Indian culture, it didn't matter what you looked like. If a tribe adopted you, you were a part of that tribe, like it or not.
Thanks.
And Flying Squirrel said the Africans were the whites. Shh, don't do that.
Oh, we know that. Some of them know that.
Afrikaans, as they call them.
Thank you for addressing the comments. I mean, 2019 Wikipedia talk.
Where the proof at?
Proof is a problem movement.
Proof is a problem.
Would you say there's going to be a
That movie get finished yet?
No, it's still. I mean, it's 2019. We might as well just keep coming.
So I'm putting the link to the Cherokee American Wars in there again, just in case I forget. So, Cherokee American Wars, also known as the Chickamauga Wars, were a series of back and forth raids, campaigns, ambushes, minor skirmishes, and several full-scale frontier battles in the Old Southwest from 1776 to 1795 between the Cherokee and American settlers on the frontier. Most of the events took place in the Upper South. While the fighting stretched across the entire period, there were times of little or no action, at times spanning several months. Ooh, so that means for several months there was no fight.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of odd to me that America was supposedly, I'll say it again, supposedly started in 1776, but you get into the 1800s and they just formed in certain states. And I'm talking states out of them 13 colonies.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, is this the same as the disbanding of Confederation after war or after fighting?
Well, they supposed to. Federation disband after the war.
Yeah, but it seemed like the wars never ended. You just changed. You either change alliances or you change sides, but the wars kept going.
Yep.
And Doodle Vision says too many wars, not enough slave ships. Where are the slave ships of 200 West Africans?
Man, they came over here on stop. People tell you they floated next.
That A2 timeline, well, that ain't A2 timeline. America's timeline.
Yeah, the timeline not fitting. It does not fit.
It does not. Something missing and something not supposed to be there.
David Corey says made that up. Well, let's be fair. Maybe it wasn't made up.
They only made up half of it.
Well, maybe something was just left out. A whole bunch.
Hey,
They're not lying. They telling half truths.
well, if half of it is truth, what's the other half?
You're lying. Stop. Man, they pulled the roots. It could have been real.
Yeah. It might have been in somebody else's fight.
Free says, how was all this happening at the same time as they're supposedly winning their independence from the crown? Come on.
Come on, son.
Hey, Lon, let's just follow the story and see where it leads us. Must be objective here. But you're asking some great questions. The Cherokee leader Dragon Canoe, who some historians call the Savage Napoleon, and his warriors and other Cherokee fought alongside and in conjunction, with Indians from a number of other tribes, most often Muskogee, in the Old Southwest and the Shawnee in the Old Northwest during the Revolutionary War. They also fought alongside British troops, Loyalist militia, and the King's Carolina Rangers. Open warfare broke out in the summer of 1776 along the frontier of the Watauga, Holston, Nolichucky, and Doe Rivers in East Tennessee, as well as the colonies, later states, of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. It later spread to those along the Cumberland River in Middle Tennessee and Kentucky. See, I told y'all they started out as colonies and then became states. Anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. The wars can be divided into two phases. The first phase, one place from 1776 to 1783, in which the Cherokee fought as allies of the Kingdom of Great Britain against the American colonies. The Cherokee War of 1776 encompassed the entirety of the Cherokee Nation. At the end of 1776, the only militant Cherokee were those who migrated with Dragon Canoe to the Chickamauga towns and were known as the Chickamauga Cherokee. The second phase lasted from 1783 to 1794, in which the Cherokee served as proxies of the Viceroy of New Spain against the recently formed United States of America because of their relocation westward to new homes initially known as the Five Lower Towns. Stop, back up, pause. The second phase lasted from 1783 to 1794, which the Cherokee served as proxies. Don't you always talk about wars that fought by proxies, Bones?
Yep.
Of the Viceroyalty of New Spain against the recently formed United States of America. Okay, grab your hard hats. We're going in.
We going in. We going in.
Viceroyalty of Spain.
Man, I don't even know where we are now.
I'm putting it in the chat.
My headlamp ain't working.
They said, oh no, Sella, I thought you was about to hop on. Be like, first off, you know what it is if you read.
I just put the link in the back chat also. Oh God.
Y'all gotta excuse me this morning. I'm a little woozy. Just a little.
Just a little. It's all good, bro. We got you. So, New Spain, like New Code, just like the new Kingdom of Spain was the integral territorial entity of the Spanish Empire established by Habsburg Spain during the Spanish colonization of the Americas. It covered a huge area that included territories in North America, South America, Asia, and Oceania. Wait, what?
Oceania? What is Oceania?
She's stupid. It covered a huge area that included territories in North America, South America, Asia, and Oceania.
Okay, that's what it is.
Oceania is a region which includes Australia's,
Yeah, the Pacific.
Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia.
Yeah, you might well say the Pacific Islands was referred to as Oceania.
It originated in 1521 after the fall of Mexico Tenochtitlan. Now, where have we heard that from?
Yeah.
Vision, aka James Flame, aka Choctaw Jimmy, talks about that all the time. And is that who I think it is?
You heard the word. You on the 7-second delay and still heard the word. I bet it's about time for me to come on. He must have been reading ahead. What's going on? Peace, James.
Peace. Grand Rising.
Greetings, one and all. Good to hear y'all voices, especially you, Brother Bones. Go right ahead. Keep going. You're in there. Go ahead.
Okay. The main event of the Spanish conquest, which did not properly end until much later as its territory continued to grow to the north. It was officially created on 8 March 1535 as a kingdom. The first 4 viceroyalty Spains created in the Americas. Its first viceroy was Antonio de Mendoza y Pancho, and the capital of the kingdom was Mexico City, established on the ancient Mexico Tenochtitlan. It included what is now Mexico, plus the current U.S. states of California, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, Mexico, Arizona, Texas, Oregon, Washington, Florida, and parts of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana, as well as southwestern part of British Columbia of the present-day Canada, plus the Captaincy General of Guatemala, which included the current countries of Guatemala, Mexican state of Chiapas, Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, the Captaincy General of Cuba, current Cuba, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Trinidad and Tobago, Guadalupe, and the Captaincy General of the Philippines, including the Philippines, Guam, the Carolina Islands, the Marina Islands, and the short-lived Spanish Formosa, in modern-day northern Taiwan, as well as the briefly occupied Sultanate of Ternate.
This is answering a very good question I had. When
Wow.
it came to the European wars and all this, how was these people getting all over the place? They let you know right now, these people had empires there already.
So, James, before I go any further, can you explain to me what exactly in the HE double hockey sticks am I reading?
Well, I was going to put it in the chat, but I'll go ahead and then I'll be brief, and then I'm going to let the mic go. This is what has been going on and why the 7 Years' War spilled over into the Pacific. The Spanish called all of that Negro land. All of it Negro land, which is why those Filipinos have the same culture and the same temperament as those in the Atlantic, specifically Puerto Ricans. If you know any Puerto Ricans and you know any Filipinos, their ways, their culture, their mannerisms are one and the same. These were all the same people. Then you have to ask yourself, why were the Spanish calling all of that Negro land? Everywhere they went, they saw us. This is what all of this was, and the 7 Years' War spilled over. Remember who was on what side. And this will also explain why, because that region of Oceania is also Australia. And you'll find out why all of a sudden the British, so-called British, took over Oceania, that whole region. And then why the colonizers later on known as the United States, why do they have stake in all these territories? Why the Philippines, why is that a U.S. territory? Like I say, the 7 Years' War was the original World War. World War I was World War II. World War II was World War III. Hope I didn't lose anybody. But it continued on, and it's still the same people. It is your Germanic-speaking languages versus Ladino-speaking languages. But that's why it spread that far. And what they did was, when Tenochtitlan. Everyone talks about Qatar being over there and an artificial island and all the rest of that stuff. Tenochtitlan was an artificial island, which is why I say again, no knock against certain people across the pond, but you're talking all this time ago that they built an artificial island over here. So where's your West African artificial island? Or African artificial island, period. The Spanish knew who they, and the way they conquered, and I'm gonna yield the mic, the way they conquered was their cross was the same symbolism as Kukulkan, which is why you will find the Chirimaca and the Chirimacha and the Chiquimacha are all the same people. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. The ones that you find that they talk about with the Confederate cross with the stars is the same symbol as Kukulkan, known as Quetzalcoatl, that he's holding on to the cross, meaning the four quadrants. If you look at his symbol, not the modern day stuff, but look at the symbol of Quetzalcoatl, it looks like that he is carrying a cross. And the cross is in the form of that X, representing the 4 points, the 4 cardinals, the 4 directions. Don't let them fool you, which is why the Confederate sign still gets back to our people. I yield the mic, and I know I said a lot, but I'm gonna put the names, the spelling of the names of these people in the chat. These were all the same people. No matter where you went, all the so-called New Spain was us. Like I said, if you go to across the Atlantic, you follow the corn. If you go to the Pacific, you follow the yams. I yield this cotton picking mic. This is a good one. On fire. I gotta go.
So,
Woo!
yeah, that was. I gotta do it. Hold on. Where it at?
I hope y'all had them hard hats on, steel toe boots, double strap seat belts, backhoes, front end loaders, dump trucks, cranes.
Ladarian Wood says, Viceroy, yo, they got those in Star Wars. They was always doing some foul stuff in the movies. I mean, the movies are about politics for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no ifs and buts about that. You can find a lot of your history replayed out during a lot of these movies.
So when they talk about these being proxies, Cherokee served as proxies of the Viceroyalty of New Spain against the recently formed United States of America. Is it possible that the Cherokee could have also formed as proxies in these other areas? Which is the reason why you have Moravian designated as an emperor of all Cherokee. Because you can't be an emperor of all Cherokee unless you have Cherokee in more than one place other than the United States. If I'm wrong, please somebody let me know.
Well, we know that's possible because Spain came here first, and Spain had these colonies all over the place. We know the soldiers that they used was the American Indian. That's how they got everywhere.
Pamela Hall says, Lord, I got lost. I need that repeated in slow motion. Basically, Pamela, what it boils down to is, it looks like, considering, take this with a grain of salt because this is Wikipedia, even though the sources are at the bottom, but we understand that this is just one version, one side of the story. But according to this, and based off of Cherokee, based off of what's talked about the Cherokee, it says the second phase of the war, Cherokee Wars, lasted from 1983 to 1794, in which the Cherokee serves as proxies of the Viceroyalty of New Spain against the recently formed United States of America. So we then went and looked up what a Viceroyalty of New Spain was. And it goes on to say it was basically Spanish colonization. During the Spanish colonization of Americas, it covered a huge area that included territories in North America, South America, Asia, and Oceania. So when they say that they served as proxies of the Viceroyalty of New Spain against the recently formed United States of America, Viceroyalty covered many other places besides North America and South America. They get specific. They cover
Basically,
go ahead, Bones.
anytime Spanish royalty wanted to check the American colonists or America, period, the Cherokees was the right hand to do it. To make a long story.
But not just in America, not just in the Americas.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Anytime they needed something checked, dealing with anybody trying to spread, trying to receive anything, trying to go to war, trying to get out of line, you're gonna send your right hand. That was the Cherokees. That probably would explain why the Cherokees adopting basically everybody at one time. They probably lost so many they had to get their numbers back.
So Darren was it. This is deep, man. I'm learning so much. Can I recommend y'all channel to other people? Yes, please do. She says, I got my sons listening already, but man, everybody needs to get some of this teaching. This is mind blowing. Well, we appreciate that, Ladarian Woods. And at the end of the day, what all we're doing is we're just exposing this information to people to give a perspective not only from, and I'm using air quotes, Wikipedia, but we also have a perspective from an Indian who has spoken with his elders and knows this history and can tie this history in. So we're not just giving you book knowledge or quote unquote scholarship. You're talking to Indians who can verify and validate this information. So yeah, please do share this information. And at the end of the day, we're here to get this information out. And as always, because we're always going to cite our sources, if there is any contrary information or that we want to rebut or debate, please cite your source. That's the only thing we require. So, hopefully that helps. So, and I'm still reading from Wikipedia talking about New Spain. And it goes on to read, other kingdoms of the Spanish Empire bordered New Spain and were given the right of appeal to most senior representatives of the king. New Spain proper was organized in capacities general. Kings were independent of New Spain, separate from New Spain itself. Nueva Galicia, Captaincy General of Guatemala. Nueva Vizcaya, 1562, New Kingdom of Leon, 1569. Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico, 1598. Nueva Extremadura, 1674, and Nueva Santander, 1746. There were 4 captaincies: Captaincy General of the Philippines, 1574, Captaincy General of Cuba, Captaincy General of Puerto Rico, Captaincy General of Santo Domingo. These independent kingdoms and territorial divisions each had their own governor and captain generals, who in New Spain was the viceroy himself, who added this title to his other dignities. In Guatemala, Santo Domingo, and Nueva Galicia, these officials were called presiding governors, since they were leading royal audiences. For this reason, these hearings were considered praetorial. There were 2 great estates in America: the most important was Marquis States of the Valley of Oaxaca, property of Hernan Cortez and his descendants that included a set of vast territories where Marquis had civil and criminal jurisdictions, and the right to grant land, water, and forest, and within which were their main possessions cattle, ranches, agriculture, work, sugar mills, wooling houses, and shipyards. The other estate was the Duhe of Atlixo, granted in 1708 by King Philip V to Jose Sarmiento del Valladares, former viceroy of New Spain, and married to the Countess Moctezuma. The civil and criminal jurisdiction of Atlixo, Topeka, Chimango, Tepe, and Tula de Allende, another important Marquis state, was the Marquis state of Buglas in Negros Island of the Philippines, which was awarded to the descendants of Sebastian Elcano and his crew. The first circumnavigate of the world to the world, King Charles III introduced reforms in the organization of the viceroyalty. In 1786, known as Bourbon Reforms, which created the incidencias, which allowed to limit in some way the viceroy's attributions. So there is a Negro island at the Philippines. Does anybody care to guess who these individuals are? Just out of curiosity.
Go ahead, brother. You deep. You deep. Go ahead.
Jason Squahana says, Doodle, you always vindicate me. I was trying to bring this up last year. Darian Wood says, I will thank you all for your help and time. It does help good to know more about who we are and what happened to our people. Yeah, so now I'm reading where it reads, New Spain developed highly regional divisions reflecting the impact of climate, topography, indigenous populations, and mineral resources. The areas of central and southern Mexico had dense indigenous populations with complex social, political, and economic organization. The northern area of Mexico, a region of nomadic and semi-nomadic indigenous populations, was not generally conducive to dense settlements, but the discovery of silver in Zacatecas in the 1540s drew settlement there to exploit the mines. Silver mining not only became the engine of the economy of New Spain, but vastly enriched Spain and transformed the global economy. New Spain was the New World terminus of the Philippine trade, making the kingdom a vital link between Spain's New World Empire and its Asian Empire. Sir James, what does this mean?
Well, who was manning the mines, and I say this all the time, and I don't want to come across as sounding like I'm bashing West Africans. I'm not. If you are who you are, then you are who you are. Now, Spain and Northwest Africa were pretty much kissing cousins as far as the landmass. So going into Northwest Africa and going into Africa, Spain never said that Africa was the promised land. The Spaniards and the Portuguese and the rest of the Europeans that came over here has always said that this so-called new land, which is the old land, is the promised land. They were digging for silver, digging the mines for silver, gold, jade, the trees to build their ships. But you got to know where all this wood coming from. They came over, they were chopping down all the forests. And when you found a battle with Cortez, and you find out that Cortez actually stopped in the Caribbean and was taught by a woman, a female, the customs when they were going to get into the Yucatan. That is how he was able to defeat. Though it was the Aztecs was the last overlapping of all these civilizations. You hear about the Olmec, you hear about the Maya, and then you hear about the Aztec. There's several others, but those were the main ones that you hear about. So the Aztecas are still the same people. Again, Texas is named after Aztecas. Still get into Anahuac. These same people are still here. So it was a female that was upset on how the Aztecs were running things in the Yucatan, and she was in the Caribbean and gave them all the backdrop on the religion, because it wasn't just about the physical overtake, it was also about the religion. So again, that's why they came on the crosses, which is why you will find so many that they call Latinos, they call Latinos for a reason, why they are so heavily Catholic, but yet the culture and the customs are still there. All they did was replace Kukulkan, aka Quetzalcoatl, with the one that they call Jesus the Christ. That is all they did. So you see all these people, which is why you see Catholicism spread all throughout Meso and South America. You see it all spread out all into the Pacific. This is why. And these same people, and you think if they were taking the Cherokee, they were taking the people here. If they were taking, the Cassava Suponi, the Isa, to sail the ships. So now this opens up the door for these Acadians, aka these Germans, to start taking over, because there are less people in this land. You keep reading over and over and over that the people were in the land. All of a sudden they disappeared. All of a sudden they disappeared. But where did they go? Now you're starting to find out where they went and what happened. And that the Garifino, look up the Garifino, and I'll type it in the chat so everybody can look it up for themselves. They will tell you that they came over into Mesoamerica in the land that they call Belize. They didn't say anything about them coming from Africa. They said they came from the Caribbean, and they were brought over there for work to man the mines, to dig for the silver and the jade for the Spanish. I yield the mic.
LJ Free had a question. She says, "Why are they talking about Marquis Ate in regards to the New Spain? Marquis is a title of French nobility, isn't it?"
Also remember, the Spanish and the French, they cousins.
Yeah, Free put in, Spain is less than 9 miles away from Africa. If Africa was a promised land, I think they'd know, since that's basically their backyard.
Skipping rocks back and forth at each other.
Pamela Hall says, due to the leading speeches. Yeah, that's true.
Then we also gotta remember the Portuguese is Dutch, and the French and the Germans, they're the same people. It's just construct of different names that kind of throw you off. And that's a recent construct of what it's been like French and Italian and all that. Because to this day, legally, ain't they all labeled as Europeans?
Yeah.
Even the Chinese are considered Europeans.
Yeah. I found out there's a link dealing with Garifuna, Garinagu, and it basically gives you a description of them in reference to Belize. So I'm putting a link in the back chat, so hopefully it's done. Jay dropped a link with some images. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate you, bro.
I see everybody prepared. Hard hats, pickaxes, and shovels.
Okay, so where do I pick up? Okay, give me a minute. Okay, so we're still talking about New Spain, the viceroyalty, and how the Cherokee were their proxy. From the beginning of the 19th century, the kingdom fell into crisis, aggravated by the Peninsular War and its direct consequences in the kingdom. The political crisis in Mexico in 1808, which ended with the government of Viceroy Jose de Irigaray, and later gave rise to the conspiracy of Valladolid and the conspiracy of Querétaro. This last one was a direct antecedent of the Mexican War of Independence, which, when concluded in 1821, disintegrated the viceroyalty and gave way to the Mexican Empire, in which finally Augustin de Iturbide would be crowned. To show the links, there are pics. They had sent me to Jay had sent me to Pinterest, and I don't think I have a Pinterest account, so my apologies. So if anybody else could open those up and post them, that'd be great. So in 1821, the viceroyalty was disintegrated, and it gave way to the Mexican Empire, in which finally Augustin de Iturbide would be crowned. So I guess that was the first leader of Mexico outside of the viceroyalty. So it goes on to talk about the kingdom of New Spain and its relationship to the crown. Anytime you want to break in, James, please do so. The kingdom of New Spain was established following the Spanish conquest of Aztec Empire as the New World Kingdom, dependent on the crown of Castile, since the initial funds for exploration came from Queen Isabella. Although New Spain was a dependency of Spain, it was a kingdom, not a colony, subject to the presiding monarch of the Iberian Peninsula. The monarch had sweeping power in the overseas territories. The king possessed not only the sovereign right but the property rights. He was the absolute proprietor, the sole political head of this American dominions. Every privilege and position, economic, political, or religious, came from him. It was on its basis that the conquest, occupation, and government of the Spanish New World was achieved. The first viceroy of New Spain was installed in 1535 in the Kingdom of New Spain as the king's deputy or substitute. He was the first New World viceroy and one of only two in the Spanish Empire until the 18th century Bourbon reforms. Can anybody break that down in plain English for me? Just curious.
Still got me puzzled.
Because from what I'm seeing, the viceroyalty had basically absolute power. Whatever the viceroyalty, or the viceroy, said went. It says the king possessed not only the sovereign right, but the property rights. He was an absolute proprietor, the sole political leader of his American dominions. Every privilege and position, economic, political, or religious, came from him. It was on this basis that the conquest, occupation, and government of the Spanish New World was achieved.
Sound like a pope to me.
Don't it?
And this was the same tactics that your Germanic speaking people, aka the British, used, but except they called them governors.
Same tactic, different title, different way. So then it goes on to read the Spanish Empire comprised territories in the North Overseas Septentrion from North America and the Caribbean to the Philippine, Mariana, and Caroline Islands. At its greatest extent, the Spanish crown claimed on the mainland of Americas much of North America, South America, much of North America, south of Canada. That is, all of present-day Mexico and Central America except Panama, most of present-day United States west of the Mississippi River plus the Floridas. To the west of the continent, New Spain also included Spanish East Islands, Philippine Islands, Mariana Islands, Caroline Islands, parts of Taiwan, and parts of Moluccas. To the east of the continent, it included the Spanish West Indies, Cuba Hispaniola, comprising the modern states of Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Trinidad, and the Bay Islands. Until the 18th century, when Spain saw its claims in North America threatened by other European powers, much of what were called the Spanish borderlands consisted of territory now part of the United States. This was not occupied by many Spanish settlers, as considered more marginal to Spanish interests in the most densely populated and lucrative areas of central Mexico. To shore up its claims in North America, started in the 18th century, Spanish expeditions to the Pacific Northwest explored and claimed the coast of what is now British Columbia and Alaska. On the mainland, the administrative units included Los Californias, that is the Baja California Peninsula, still part of Mexico, and divided into Baja California and Baja California Sur, Alta California, present-day Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, western Colorado, and southern Wyoming. From the 1760s, Louisiana, including the western Mississippi River Basin and Missouri River Basin, Nueva Extremadura, the present-day states of Coahuila and Texas, and Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico, parts of Texas and New Mexico. So, James, basically, everything except for the 13 colonies, they pretty much had their hands in. Is that what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the way they ran it in what we call the Gulf Coast of North America, they were pretty much left alone. The Indians that were there, which is why there was such a great conflict when it came to the Red Stick Wars, because the Seminoles, remember they kept saying, oh, the Seminoles, runaway slaves, they keep coming back and kidnapping slaves. No, the Seminoles was going and getting their people back that the colonizers kept stealing. The British started to complain to Spain, and Spain was like, no, I can do nothing. I can do nothing. Why? Because that was their land. And then you're going to go on at the end of the 1800s. And remember, there was the Spanish-American War. This is why this spilled over into Florida and Cuba. For this very reason, this was still the same conflict. They could not come over into Indian territory. The colonizers kept coming over there, stealing kids, going. The Seminoles kept bringing them back, which they kept calling all of us Seminoles at that time. We kept going back, getting our people. It wasn't we going to stealing slaves. We were stealing our people back. Why would we be stealing Africans? Those aren't our people. What are you stealing Africans for? Well, that's another mouth to feed. That's why I say again, we don't kidnap people. That's another mouth to feed. We got our own children to feed. So you start looking at the conflicts between the British and the French. Then look at the conflicts between the British and the Spanish. Then look at the conflicts between the French and the Spanish. And you keep seeing this whole cycle over and over, and why the role that everybody played, these outside countries, in the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and all of these other wars that were going on. But they were not coming into this territory like that. But as we continue to be shipped out voluntarily, not as slaves, voluntarily, to help keep the Spanish kingdom going, then of course, if you're not home, somebody breaks into your house and they taking over. Lady Free said it yesterday that Goldilocks and Three Bears. You come home and somebody's been eating your porridge, somebody's been sleeping in your bed. Not Drew Hill. You're the mic.
You had the same thought as me.
So hold on, James. So how does all this tie in with Alexander Hamilton and him using the East as a navy and wanted to separate from the colonies? Was he going to team up with Spain to create this new world over there with the Isa and the rest of the Indians? Is that what I'm understanding?
Spain was just going to let him be the viceroy. That's it. They were like, this is yours. You run it. All you do is pay tribute back to Spain. And that's all they were doing in Mexico. It was just some of the viceroys got greedy and they kept overtaxing the people. The best example I could give is Zorro. If you've ever watched Zorro, that's what it was about. It was about the people rebelling because the viceroys they were saying, oh, we're collecting this money, we're collecting this for the empire, for Spain. And they were like, no, you're overtaxing us. And that's when the rebellion started. Because you had the vice, but they were going to make him pretty much, he was going to be El Presidente of this new country. And the French, the Northern French, aka your Dutch, your Vikings, got word of that and ran interference. And we also know what happened to Alexander Hamilton too, right?
No, tell us.
He had a duel. Something happened during that duel. He had a gun battle.
That wasn't what Aaron Burr was.
Affirmative.
No.
See, well, I tell you how people start getting assassinated and eliminated.
So the French selling, or the French illegal selling of Louisiana basically disrupted all of that.
Which is why you had this illegal purchase of Louisiana. Because now go back, and if you recall, the United States federal system was broke. So how are you paying the French for a land purchase, and the French didn't control the land in the first place? The only thing the French had was the port of New Orleans. That is it. They didn't have all the rest of that. So how could the United States pay off France? Because remember, France was going broke, because all this is going on simultaneously with the Haitian Revolution. The French had no money. This also goes on at the same time that the French were trying to invade Russia, and they lost because they froze to death. See how history repeats itself? They froze to death. They troops started dying. So then after that, they were like, no, we're not following you, Napoleon. You crazy. You are crazy. So the French were getting their heads handed to them in a handbasket. The colonies were broke. So how did all this take place? I'm gonna tell you how it took place. And this is not an attack on anybody's religion or faith. I'm gonna tell you right now. The reason why I say this is because I know. It is when you go to church and they collect this big offering, and y'all have a guest church, and then the pastor that preached, everybody gives him a quote unquote love offering, and then he writes a $500 check. Well, as he writes that $500 check to the host church, he sends one of his deacons or trustees to the back and say, let me get that back. It's all a game. It is all a game. What monies did the colonists have to pay France when we already know that the states were suing the federal banks because the bank was broke? Think about it. I yield the mic.
Man, gotta get this timeline popping. Somebody lying.
Like we said, the timeline we said in the beginning, it don't fit. Too many missing and movable.
Said it again. Mic check, Bones.
No, I was just saying it don't fit. There's too many missing pieces and parts.
Are you saying if the gloves don't fit, you must have quit?
You're saying the same thing about the time frame. If it don't fit, stop it.
Basically.
So it goes on to read the conquest era of 1521 to 1535. The Caribbean islands and early Spanish explorations around the Circumcaribbean region had not been a major political, strategic, or financial importance until the conquest of the Aztec Empire in 1521. However, important precedents of exploration, conquest, and settlement and crown rule had been initially worked out in the Caribbean, which long affected subsequent regions including Mexico and Peru. The indigenous societies of Mesoamerica, brought under Spanish control, were of unprecedented complexity and wealth from what they had encountered in the Caribbean. This presented both an important opportunity and a potential threat to the power of the Crown of Castile, since the conquerors were acting independent of effective crown control. The societies could provide the conquistadors, especially Hernan Cortes, a base from which the conquerors could become autonomous or even independent of the crown. As a result, the Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain, Charles V, created the Council of Indies in 1524 as a crown entity to oversee the crown's interest in the New World since the time of the Catholic monarchs. Central Iberia was governed through councils appointed by the monarch with practical jurisdiction. Thus, the creation of the Council of Indies became another but extremely important advisory board to the monarch. The Crown had set up the Casa de Construcción, House of Trade, in 1503 to regulate contacts between Spain and its overseas possessions. A key function was to gather information about navigation to make trips less risky and more efficient. Philip II sought systematic information about his overseas empire and mandated reports known as Relocaciones Geográficas, with text on topography, economic conditions, and populations, among other information. They were accompanied by maps of the area discussed, many of which were drawn by indigenous artists. The Francisco Hernandez expedition, 1570-77, the first scientific expedition to the New World, was sent to gather information on medical plants and practices. So, James, what is this?
Keep going. I'm gonna jump in just a minute. Keep going.
Okay. The Crown created the first mainland high court of Audiencia in 1527 to regain control of the administration of New Spain from Cortes, who was the premier conqueror of the Aztec Empire, was ruling the name of the king but without crown oversight or control. An earlier Audiencia had been established in Santo Domingo in 1526 to deal with the Caribbean settlements. The courthouse in the Casa Reals in Santo Domingo was charged with encouraging further exploration and settlements with the authority granted by the Crown. Management by the Audiencia, which was expected to make executive decisions as a body, proved unwieldy. Therefore, in 1535, King Charles V named Don Antonio de Mendoza as the first viceroy of New Spain. After the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire in 1532 opened up the vast territories of South America to further conquest, the Crown established an independent viceroyalty of Peru there in 1542.
Keep following the breadcrumbs. And then while they were establishing all of these kingdoms to go back and pay homage to the crown, who was controlling the crown? Religiously, what were the Spaniards? Catholics. So this is where your Pope and your Catholic Church start coming in, and they start coming up around the same time. And that's why you will find a lot of the treasures and artifacts that were from here over in Rome. Keep following the breadcrumbs. This is why people, you hear people complaining all the time about, oh, the Catholic Church and doing this and doing that, and the Catholic Church is running the world. So it still goes back to Spain, still under Catholicism. They were paying tribute to the Catholic Church. So you have the locals that were paying homage to the viceroys, aka the governors, later on known as the chiefs. See how they were doing this? If you notice, there were a couple of words that you slid in there, Brother Thomas, that you probably didn't catch. Remember, they started naming these people chiefs. See how the German-speaking people, what they were copycatting what the Spaniards were doing. They were appointing chiefs that had no Indian blood. I yield the mic.
Wow.
There was a game that little kids play, and we used to play as kids, say, anything you can do, I can do better.
Yeah, I remember that game.
Because you think now all of these were appointed chiefs. That's why you keep saying, oh, they Scott Irish. They're Scott Irish. Well, wait a minute. What's all this going on here? How are we doing this? And your Scott Irish were Vikings, but they were paying tribute to the Catholic Church. That is why there was a divide between your Anglo-Saxons and your Scott Irish. So your Scott Irish are Catholic. Different group of people that came in from the Spanish, but still paid tribute to the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church is sitting there like a fat cat because they're getting, you got to think literally, when they talk about the British Empire and the sun never set, that time, the Spanish Empire, the sun never set because it literally stretched from all over the world. So all of that gold, all of that silver, all of that copper, all the precious jewels, the diamonds, the jade, all of that stuff is going to the Catholic Church. And everybody's getting their cut. Everybody's pinching a corner. That you have the viceroys that are, I'm sorry, go ahead, brother, go ahead.
Wouldn't it be technically at this time there only are two nations on that side? what we know is the Dutch and the Portuguese, and what we know is the Spanish?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And now, you notice the 7-Year War start to make more and more sense. What we call World War I will start to make more sense. World War II will start to make more sense.
Antonio,
Germanic.
go ahead, Bones. Go ahead, James. Sorry.
Oh, that was me. Go ahead, brother. You said someone had a question. I couldn't see the chat.
I was just saying that Antonio Baptiste says religious war, full competition. Pamela Hall says, Doodoo, is that why Rome was all over our history books locked down?
That's exactly why. Exactly why. Because again, your other what we know as all these other different breakdowns of faith, where you got your Baptist, you got your Methodist, Presbyterian, Episcopal, all of these fell under the umbrella of being Protestant. Protestant means protester. What are you protesting? Remember, this started with the English protesting the Catholic Church. And this is what the battle started over in Europe. It was your Germanic-speaking people that had a problem with the Catholic Church. Remember, anybody Baptist, you dealing with Lutherans, all the rest of that. Look up Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. Look up Martin Luther and find out who he is and what denominations came out of his belief. Calvinism. Look at all these things. The Baptist Church came out of Calvinism. They were taken over. That's why I say again, Calvinists, that's why they wanted to take over Tennessee, because Tennessee is middle ground. That's the middle ground, because if you can control the center, you control everything else. If you control the axis, then you control the whole wheel. You determine which way it goes, how it rotates. I yield the mic.
Okay, so these chiefs that were being appointed, are you saying, or is it possible that not only were they being appointed chiefs, but they were also being appointed viceroys of areas outside of the United States?
No doubt, which is why, again, you notice you keep reading about all of these chiefs. They kept wanting them to go visit England. But then there were also chiefs that were going and visiting Spain. We read about that yesterday. They said it was one that wanted to go, but his wife was sick.
Yeah, Moitoi. Emperor Moitoi.
And then think about how King Philip's war started. It was the going back and forth. We know that King James came over here. There was a lot of back and forth because it was monopoly. It was truly monopoly. And if I can get you on my side, get you on this side, and while we are the proxy, so I put in the chat, we are the crash test dummies, because those that are the testors, they don't get hurt. They sitting there and they push that button and that car is going 150 miles per hour and that crash test dummy is strapped in, and sometimes if the strap doesn't last and you fly through the window. That's us. It was, again, as Brother Bones have been saying all this time, it was us fighting against us. And they are sitting back in the cut. The Spanish have us as proxies. You have the British have us as proxies. You have the French have us as proxies. It wasn't them, because again, they were already fighting each other in Europe. You cannot procreate that quickly to do all of this fighting all over the world. But there were millions and tens of millions of us over here. Bodies, had all of these bodies to fight their wars. And we're still doing it today. I yield the mic.
Free brings up a great point. She says, seats of power. Military equals America. Financial equals England. Religion equals Rome. She said, follow the districts with obelisks. Correct, David Corey. We are the original cowboys and Indians and American soldiers. Wow. So I'm going to read this last paragraph. Evangelizing in New Spain. Now I'll put this link in the chat so people can go back and do your research. Because the Roman Catholic Church had played such an important role in Reconquista, Christian request, of the Iberian Peninsula from the Moors, the church in essence became another arm of the Spanish government. The Spanish crown granted it a large role in the administration of the state, and this practice became even more pronounced in the New World, where prelates often assumed the role of government officials. In addition to church explicit political role, the Catholic faith became a central part of Spanish identity after the conquest of last Muslim kingdom in the peninsula, the Emirate of Granada, and the expulsion of all Jews who did not convert to Christianity. Conquistadors brought with them many missionaries to promulgate the Catholic religion. Americans were taught the Roman Catholic religion and the language of Spain. Initially, the missionaries hoped to create a large body of American priests, but this did not come to be. Moreover, efforts were made to keep the American culture aspects that did not violate the Catholic traditions. As an example, most Spanish priests committed themselves to learn the most important Amerindian languages, especially during the 16th century, and wrote grammars so that the missionaries could learn the languages and preach in them. This was similarly practiced by the French colonists as well. At first, conversions seemed to be happening rapidly. The missionaries soon found that most of the natives had simply adopted the God of the heavens, as they called the Christian God, as just another one of their many gods. While they often held the Christian God to be an important deity because it was the God of the victorious conquerors, they did not see the need to abandon their own beliefs. As a result, a second wave of missionaries began an effort to completely erase the old beliefs, which they associated with rationalized human sacrifice found in many of the native religions, eventually putting an end to this practice common before the arrival of the Spaniards. In the process, many artifacts of pre-Columbian Mesoamerican culture were destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of native codices were burned, native priests and teachers were prosecuted, and the temples and statues of old gods were torn down. Even some foods associated with the native religions, like amaranth, were forbidden. Many clerics, such as Bartolome de las Casas, also tried to protect the natives from de facto and actual enslavement to the settlers, and obtained from the crown decrees and promises to protect native Mesoamericans, most notably the new laws. Unfortunately, the royal government was too far away to fully enforce them, and many abuses against the natives, even among the clergy, continued. Eventually, the crown declared that natives to be legal minors and placed under the guardianship of the crown, which was responsible for their indoctrination. It was this status that barred the native population from the priesthood. During the following centuries under Spanish rule, a new culture developed that combined the customs and traditions of the indigenous people with that of Catholic Spain. Numerous churches and other buildings were constructed by native labor in the Spanish style, and cities were named after various saints or religious topics, such as St. Louis Potosí, after St. Louis, and Veracruz, the True Cross. The Spanish Inquisition and its new Spanish counterpart, the Mexican Inquisition, continued to operate in the viceroyalty until Mexico declared its independence. During the 17th and 18th century, the Inquisition worked with the viceregal government to block the diffusion of liberal ideas during the Enlightenment, as well as the revolutionary Republican and democratic ideas of the United States War of Independence and the French Revolution. So from this, there was no separation of church and state. Church was a state, or was a governing body of the viceroyalty. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, sir. That is correct. That's what I was putting in the chat. That when the colonizers started mentioning separation of church and state, they were saying separation of the colony's government versus the Catholic Church. Because they were saying no more paying to the Catholic Church, which is why, again, they came and said no more paying the King of England, because we are the first Americans. We were not born over there. We don't have to pay tribute to a land that is not our home.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, James, because they used them 2 points in history and they spent it into a confusing story. You never notice the average person, when you think about the Catholic Church, why does your mind go to Northern Europe? But in reality, the Catholic Church is not in Northern Europe. It's in Southern Spain. Just think about it, even through school and everything that you was taught. When you think of the Catholic Church, you don't think of Spain. Your mind drifts off someplace Northern Europe. Just think about that for a second. On everybody else.
Yeah, that does make sense. I can see how that's possible, because I never associated Spain with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, your average person don't. You always think for some reason Northern Europe. Even when they tell you about over there with the Crusades, with the Catholic Church, think about it. Your mind automatically thinks Northern Europe, but it wasn't. Remember, Morocco and all these places, these were Islamic countries back at these times, fighting against Catholic countries at these times. They wasn't going up and down. They were just going east and west. That's why if you read them writings, a lot of them wars, they're mentioning east and west. But through movies and history and indoctrination, it puts your mind someplace else, just like how they try to put our mind over in Africa somewhere. Because they did the same thing with their story.
Yep, you've been bamboozled.
So I think this is a good place to stop. Just a lot of information. Antonio says, "Watch the Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom." little shot of Crusades.
And you'll see where the Crusaders really were coming from. Your mass Crusaders wasn't coming from England. They were coming from out of Spain.
Is there anything that you'd like to add, James, before we call it a day? No.
Yeah, this is just another one that was on fire. You set everything ablaze, and now I hope people are starting to realize when you see those hiccups, and people say, "Oh, well, look over here, and the people look like you." Well, yeah. If you ever seen that episode of Hank Hill when Hank Hill found out he had a Korean brother because the daddy was over there in the Korean War, that's what happened.
Yep.
Because we were literally going all over the world, had already been, and continues going all over the world with the Spaniards. So of course, you're gonna have somebody that looks like you, cause all over the world, cause that's your cousin.
Hmm.
These people wasn't going all over the world and not procreating and not goosing. Kept it rated PG for the kids.
They were monks, I guess.
So you gonna have some Korean cousins, Hank Hill, Korean brothers. I'm off the mic. I appreciate y'all again. Appreciate y'all allowing me to come in. Appreciate everyone in the chat for staying tuned and share it with 10 other people. Because if you share it with 10 people, at least 5 people will tune in. I yield the mic.
Appreciate that, James. Appreciate everybody for coming through today. If you need to contact us, consciousnessassembly@gmail.com.
Another mind episode.
My bad. I was looking for the. I was looking for my mic. I hit it for myself.
Before you forget, if you haven't started your genealogy or need resources for your genealogy, you can check out the genealogy page at www.autonomousAssembly.com or www.aau.world, where we have 50 free websites to help you with your genealogy. It's also broken down to state resources, state by state, and tips and tricks on when you get stuck, on certain bumps along the road with your genealogy.
Also, too, I would like to give a shout out to Pamela Hall. We had an opportunity to talk with her yesterday. We'll be doing a community spotlight with her this evening, so stay tuned for that. She's going to be providing some very interesting information concerning her journey with not only the application process with her tribe, but also how far back she's gone, what she's discovered. And yes, it's going to be very encouraging. It's going to be very enlightening. And we're going to be providing solutions for some of the hiccups that she has come across. Also, too, with that being said, Pamela Hall, I'm sure, is not the only person that has done some things and have gotten some significant distance and made some progress with their genealogy, or is doing something in their community. So if you have people in your community that are doing things and they need to be recognized, please let us know. This is not about us. This is for everybody. And if someone's doing something positive in the community, we would like to know so that we can share it and encourage others to do the same. Again, the Conscious Assembly is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping individuals do their genealogy, do their family tree, find out who their tribe is, help them and their tribe become successfully independent, and help the community. With that, that's all I have. And Bones, go ahead and take us out.
And we say it's always fun when we get to kick it with the relatives in the rising. Until the next rising show, peace.
Peace, y'all.
All right, I got everybody muted so they can't hear you. Everybody's muted so they can't hear you. All they can hear is the music. So I'm gonna let that ride out for a while. And I'll do the transition. Say again. She always doing what? Hold on.